Hi everyone, welcome back to Get to the Plot Film Club. Hope you've all had an amazing week and I hope you all enjoyed the eclipse, although what a disappointment that was. I mean, it was quite fun seeing like all the crescents on the wall, but yeah, just I think everyone expected it to go properly dark, and I think my theory is because Gen Z, like, please tell me if you feel me with this, but I was a big fan of a TV show called Am I High growing up, and I remember specifically they did an episode about the eclipse and about how it like hypnotized everyone. And in that episode, it's very much like, oh, it's about to happen, goes dark for like a minute, and then it just moves away. But then obviously you're like, well, that's not how that works. So I think that's probably what we were all secretly expecting, but it didn't happen, which is really sad. But yeah, I'm only briefly, I'm not going to say much, but I'm just going to say if you ever do want to go on a date, IKEA is the best place to do it. It's so fun, there's so much to talk about, and it's also free, and you just get to know someone while you do it. That's all I'm going to say. Puts hair behind ear in Debbie Ryan fashion. But the other thing I was gonna say that I have actually been doing this week is kind of inspired by the movie, which obviously is Vertigo, which I'm really excited to talk about. But I'm going to a thing called Goodwood Revival next month, and I am so excited. I've been 3 times before. I didn't get to go last year because I couldn't really afford to, but this is also hopefully going to be the first time I'm going to wear sort of like head to toe vintage, like actual authentic vintage. So a lot of this week has been booking myself to get in the alterations for my dress, but like getting my little accessories that are all 50s vintage. I'm so, honestly, it's like one of the things I look forward to every year. If you don't know much about Revival, actually, it's basically 3 days, like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday weekend, and every day you can go and watch vintage cars race, or you can go to the salon to get your hair done. There's lots of like thrifty places, or just even places that you can just go and like look at like still vintage cars, or you can see the ones racing. But the whole time it is just the most fun day, especially if you're into like 40s, 50s, 60s, that kind of era, that kind of fashion, which I'm really into as well. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. But look out for it if you're ever I don't know if the tickets are still going. I think there might be some for like Saturday or something, but honestly, it's the most fun time of the year for me. So do check it out if you're kind of into that thing. But anyway, on to the movie. I'm so excited to talk about this. There was so much to research with this, and I highly recommend, because I'm not really probably going to be able to fit a lot of it in this episode, but I highly recommend looking into it yourself, because there's actually a lot I really didn't know. And I think also I've never seen a Hitchcock movie before. Let me know in the comments which one you would recommend. If you've seen any others, which one do you think I should watch next? I'm thinking, the thing is that because I might watch the 39 Steps, because I was actually in a play of it at school, which was so fun. I played Pamela. Yeah, I did. Um, and yeah, I love the play. So I'd like to think that the film is obviously just as good, but let me know what you think I should watch next. So, anyway, this movie came out in 1958. It is an American psychological film, and it was produced and directed by Alfred Hitchcock. The story is based on a French novel from 1954. In English, it's translated to From Among the Dead. The film was shot mostly in San Francisco and Paramount Studios in Hollywood. Vertigo received mixed reviews on release, but has since become Hitchcock's magnum opus and one of the greatest movies of all time. To do my research a little bit about Alfred Hitchcock, it really does say a lot about his movies and what his influence was growing up. So, even though he had 2 siblings, he says that he recalls his youth to be a lonely one. His father was a very stern disciplinarian. It said that he once ordered Hitchcock to appear to the local station with a note saying that he'd been misbehaving, whereupon the sergeant on duty, as requested by his father, locked him up for a few minutes. And he basically locked him up to give him a little bit of a fear of enclosed spaces and to kind of drill in the message that he should be behaving at home, which is crazy. And he forever grew up with a fear of wrongful imprisonment. So Hitchcock's first movie, he directed a comedy called Mrs. Peabody. This was in 1922, and it's also known as Number 13. However, this was not completed due to lack of funding. His first ever released movie was Always Tell Your Wife. That was done in 1923, which he co-directed with its star Seymour Hicks, but he did not receive any credit. His own solo credit didn't come until 2 years after that movie, which was for The Lodger, A Story of a London Fog, which is regarded to be his first ever real piece of work. It was adapted from a popular novel, but it is all about Jack the Ripper, who was really prevalent in his childhood and especially where he grew up. And this movie also became his first ever cameo appearance, which he does in every single one of his movies. I will be honest, I did not catch him in this one, but I will look back and see. I've looked up where he is. I just haven't seen him yet. But I'm going to look into that very soon. And in 1926, he married his film editor and script supervisor, Alma Reville. Hitchcock, as a director, he was notoriously known for being very demanding and essentially just expecting excellence with every performance. He had a little patience for a lot of his actors. He would reference them as cattle. So one of the most famous examples was Tippi Hedren in The Birds. He made advances on her during The Birds, and after she declined, he basically said that he would ruin her career. He set real life birds to attack her in the movie The Birds, and when she got sent to hospital, the doctor essentially was like, "Are you trying to kill her?" She then appeared in Marnie, I think a couple years after the Birds that she filmed with him. And that was only because she was stuck in a 5-year contract with that studio. And at that time, actors were very much linked to the studio that they were making films of. See, now in this day and age, you don't sign a contract with a specific studio. You're not locked in with them. I guess in a sense of franchises, you can be. However, kind of Judy Garland's time, at least, I know that she was locked in with the one with the lion. I can't remember its name for some reason, but you know, the one before The Wizard of Oz, the one with the lion's head. I can't remember. I don't know why. Lionsgate. Is that Lionsgate? Sorry, no, it was Metro Goldwyn Mayers. That's the one. But no, it's telling me about the sequel. I don't care about the sequel. Oh, it's now bought by Warner Brothers. There we go. So, yeah. Anyway, she had her contract with them. That's why she had to do a lot of their movies. There was never really room to like go to the press about those kind of things unless it was after your contract. But after she did Marnie, she just had to get out of there because he was being a weirdo. What a surprise. I think, however, though, you have to do that thing that everyone says these days, which is separate the art from the artist. So in the book, Judy's involvement in regards to Madeline's death, or at least kind of the pinnacle realization that they're actually one and the same, doesn't get revealed in the book until basically the very end. But Hitchcock kind of suggested to put it in earlier so that the audience could understand Judy's dilemma. And after the first preview, Hitchcock was undecided whether he wanted to keep the letter writing scene in it. However, I think the producers sort of fought for it because, like it said, it lets the audience in on the fact that she is the same person. However, I still think that the end is still a good enough plot twist. I didn't see it coming, or at least how they did it, but I think that I'm glad that they kind of told it a bit earlier. I think the movie needed it, actually, personally, but we'll get onto that in a bit. Vera Miles, who originally appeared in Alfred Hitchcock Presents and also in The Wrong Man, she was originally scheduled to play Madeline. However, due to her getting pregnant, but also Hitchcock had gallbladder problems, so it wasn't all on her. Every article I found kept being like, she got pregnant so she couldn't do it. No, but he had illness too, okay? It's not all just on the woman's shoulders. But he was drawing out the delays, and then she got pregnant, so she couldn't be part of it. Kim Novak got the role. However, Hitchcock always said that she was miscast, which is really sad. I don't think she was at all. I thought she did a fantastic job, but can't please everyone. The cinematography is by far the best thing about this movie, personally in my opinion, but also that's kind of the consensus for a lot of it. And I think also there's one crazy big factor in this movie that was invented that has affected cinema from this point onwards. However, from the first sequence, women are displayed as objects that are willing to be moulded. From the first shot, we have the extreme close-up of the eye. That's a woman's eye. It's meant to have a little double meaning, saying that Judy is kind of labelled by Scotty as Gavin's pupil. That's why the eye is in the shot, and also that's why the title is over the eye. Pretty cool. There was a lot of experimental animation done for this movie by Saul Bass. He was the title sequence creator. It's kind of meant to be mesmerising and intensive and foreshadowing the relationship between Madeline and Scotty. The church tower in the movie actually got demolished just before filming, so every wide shot of that church tower is actually a matte painting. And one of the most influential things about this movie was it invented the dolly zoom, or also known as the vertigo effect from this movie. If you don't know what that is, the best way that I can let you know about this is that I'm guessing you've probably found me through TikTok. There was a trend on TikTok where people were like, if you zoom in on your face but you're far away, that's what you really look like. That is essentially a dolly zoom, being able to track the face or the main focus of like the shot, and you're pulling back as the focus is still on the person, so it looks like everything around them is getting bigger while they stay the focus. It's so clever. If you've ever seen Jaws, they do it in that's really prevalent in there. I think it's when the main character sees the shark in the distance, or like that moment they're on the beach. That's also the dolly zoom. But also, it's influenced so many directors throughout the years. In particular, Martin Scorsese, he uses it in The Taxi Driver, Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, but personally my favourite is Toy Story 2. If you know the film well, you'll know Woody's nightmare scene. That was actually influenced by the nightmare scene in Vertigo, and they also use a dolly zoom when Woody is falling out of Andy's hand into the cards. It is so clever, and I think also to do that in an animated movie is just so smart. Something that was really important to Hitchcock, and especially costume designer Edith Head, was the way that Madeline looked. Together, they decided that Madeline's clothing needed an eerie appearance. A trademark grey suit was chosen to heavily contrast the blonde. It seemed like an odd thing for a blonde woman to wear. Then they also added the black scarf to her white coat because it was an odd contrast. But Kim Novak, according to Hitchcock, she had all sorts of preconceived notions about her character, including what she would and would not wear. Before shooting began, she told the director she did not like the grey suit and black shoes that she was slated to wear, thinking they were too heavy and stiff for the character. Novak later recalled, "I didn't think it would matter to him what kind of shoes I wore. I had never had a director who was particular about the costumes, the way they were designed, the specific colours. The two things he wanted the most were the shoes and that grey suit." Then explained to Novak the visual aspect of the film was even more important to him than the story, and insisted on wearing the suit and the shoes that he had been planning for several months. She finally learned to make it work for her, as she saw it a symbol of her character. Bernard Herrmann was the composer of the music for this movie. He worked alongside Hitchcock through many of his movies, and he actually didn't conduct the music in this one, which every critic has usually said that it doesn't give his personal sound, which he applied in every score. However, Herrmann wanted to focus on the fact that the film is about obsession, which means it's all about circling back to the same moment again and again, and the music is also built around spirals and circles, fulfillment and despair, and he really understood what Hitchcock was going for. Considering this movie didn't actually really do well in the box office, I think it was quite similar to the previous movie, where it only was like a couple million over the budget that it made in the box office. It genuinely was said to be Hitchcock's worst movie at the time, and now it's praised to be his best movie. However, I'm going to read what you guys think now, and I think there's some really interesting perspectives in all of these, so I'm really excited to read. So, Eli gives it 4.5 stars, and Eli says, "It's honestly crazy how this film hasn't gotten worse with the years at all. It still completely holds up. The way they use the spirals, since the characters spiral out of control, is so cool as well. Even though it's sometimes thrown in with horror, it really isn't scary, which is honestly perfect for a massive scaredy cat like me. Same, and I will get onto about why I said I was scared to watch this. I will say I had to watch it in 2 sittings because I did get a bit bored in the middle, but to be fair, I had already seen it before, so that's probably why it's a classic for a reason. So yeah, no, I'm the exact same. I don't do jump scares. I hate jump scares, especially the ones that you know they're coming, because that's when I poo myself. It's funny because when there's a jump scare that you actually genuinely don't see coming up, I don't get scared. The toaster gets me every single time I make breakfast. Like, I know it's coming and yet it still scares me. Anyway, so I said when I announced this movie on TikTok that I was really scared. Basically, my dad was saying to me about this movie. Basically, I was telling him about some of the film club picks, and he was all like, "When are you gonna choose a movie that's actually good?" I don't know, maybe when I watch it and then realise it's a good movie. Anyway, so then I tell him, "We're doing Vertigo this week, how exciting." And then he goes, "Oh, there's another Hitchcock movie on there, you should have done that one." Gosh, you can't bloody win. But anyway, he was saying to me about how, for the time, it was genuinely one of the most scary movies. But then I guess how The Birds was probably scary for the time, because they weren't used to that. They weren't used to seeing those kind of effects on screen. So I was going into this movie thinking it was going to be like on the lines of Midsummer, which like is so crazy on the brain. And I think for me, I have a very visual imagination. So when I see something, like I'm going to bed and I'm going to be in that movie. Like that's how it is for me. Even if I watch like Paddington 2, which I love and adore, I will then dream about being in Paddington 2, which isn't bad. That's why I think I'm so used to watching comfort movies all the time, is because I just picture myself in those movies when I go to bed. Anyway, but no, I completely agree. I love the spiral effects throughout the movie. I think that when you say about the middle got a bit boring, I agree. It's difficult because I think Hitchcock is described to be one of those directors that's really good at building anticipation and building suspense. I get that. And I get obviously the film is about obsession, it's about repetition. But I just don't think it was engaging enough. I didn't keep being like, it's hard when it is repetition because you're like, oh, he's really obsessed. But yeah, I'm watching the same shot over and over again. And did you know, actually, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the dolly zoom shot cost $19,000 to do. So no wonder they rinsed it out as much as they did. Because that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, they've shown this shot so many times. And actually, also, the thing is, I'm coming out with all the fun facts now. Vertigo, the word vertigo is only spoken once in this movie. Fun fact. And it's near the beginning. I think it's 11 minutes in. Yes. Anyway, and actually another fact I just realised about the dolly zoom as well is that the visual is actually a set. Actually a miniature, sorry. It is a miniature that is set on its side because they had to film it vertically. They couldn't do it horizontally from the actual staircase. So it's actually a miniature on its side with the camera here, well, the camera to the side of it, and it's pulling back from the side. And that cost $19,000 to do. So I think that's the problem. The repetition was good in order to show the obsession. However, it didn't feel engaging enough. I felt that the scene where they were following each other a bit long, but then apparently that is also a route, like you can actually drive that route in San Francisco. So, fun fact for you there as well. Let me know if you've done the route, because I'd be curious to know. But yeah, no, I think 4.5 stars though, that's so good. And like you said, it's held up so well, which I think is the most important thing. So, Kat gave it 3.5 stars, and Kat says, this film really isn't my cup of tea normally. It's brilliantly made and shot, and some of the camera effects are incredible too, especially when it's a scene looking down from a height. There you go. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but it mostly just because it's not something I normally reach for. The performances were all great as well, just found myself getting a little bored at times. Again, I get what you mean. There's so many good parts about this movie. I just think that the pacing wasn't great. I think that was the thing that does it for me, and I think pacing can really make or break a movie. I think also for the time, the one thing that also does just drive you mental are the transitions between scenes where they just fade to black and then they carry on. It feels like I've made that movie on iMovie. You know what I mean? We're really using fade to black, but I guess for the time that's what they were used to. However, you wouldn't let that slide in a movie in this day and age. Like if it was fading between scenes, you'd go, "Oh, that's a Disney Channel movie, not like a $1 million budget movie." So, but for the time, I completely respect, and I do get what you mean. Like I was the same. I did feel a little bit like Anthony Pants. Can we get to the fun bit? Building so much anticipation, and then you're just at a point where you're like, I'm over this now because I just want to know what's happened. Ella gives it 4 stars and says, I really liked this. The mystery had me completely invested, and I loved how everything slowly came together while still managing to surprise me. James Stewart was definitely standout for me. Scotty became genuinely unsettling, especially once his obsession with Madeline turned into him trying to remake Judy into her, which was actually insane. I'm going to talk about this. And shivers down my spine, all of this. The romance obviously didn't work for me, but I think that's kind of the point, and the psychological side of it was so much more interesting. The cinematography and score also fit the eerie atmosphere perfectly. The bit where you really see him switch into, I must have this woman back to the version that I had before, on it like that, actually I felt like that was the creepiest bit for me, because it felt like, I don't know, like I was watching like someone dress up a Barbie, it was really difficult. And I was surprised, actually. I think the bit that got me was I was so surprised that she went along with it, because it's hard to see the romance that they had when she was playing a character, you know what I mean? So that's when I was a bit like, hang on, you're saying that you love this man and yet he doesn't know you. But then I guess that's the point. And he was always trying to strive to get back the version of Madeline that he knew, but he knew he was never going to get that in Judy. I love this. I think this is what I want to give credit to the movie, is that there's so much to talk about. There's so much to delve into. And I think that you're right. The mystery was great. The script writing was great. I agree, James Stewart was really, really good. I think he was like 46 filming this, and Kim Novak was like 26 or something like that. She was young. Like, there was a big fat age gap. And I think it annoyingly it did work because he looked older, he looked creepier. It just worked in that sense. And I think I actually did an impression of him the other day, and my mum was like, "God, you that was amazing." Do I do it now? I don't know. I think it's partly because I was just like saying, I was like, "Oh, but it's Madeline. I just want to see Madeline." And like, like he just kept being like that the whole time. And also, justice for Midge. I actually really felt for her throughout this whole movie, and I don't think she originally was going to be included in the script. I don't think she was in the book, but she was created by Hitchcock to be in the movie. And I think, yeah, you just feel for her. I think actually what's interesting as well, and I'm going to kind of wrap it up on this, is that it was a bit of an open ending as well. Like, do you think he jumped? Do you think that he went back to his home and forgot all about it? What happened to Midge? Things like that. And I think actually it surprises me, because when it was The Lobster, everyone was a bit like, I don't like open endings, like I just want to know what happens. This has an open ending, but I don't think anyone's really itching for an answer, or at least they don't feel like they've been betrayed in that sense, which I think is really interesting. In my head, I kind of think he jumped as well. I don't know why. Or his vertigo came back and he fell. That's my guess. But let me know in the comments if you think anything else from the end, if you think anything happened to him at the end. But yeah, my verdict. I think I've been toying with my answer here, but I think I'm gonna give it 3.5, because I think that the pacing was just a bit off for me personally. But there are so many interesting factors about this, and I think, like, who was it that said? Eli said, yes, that this movie has held up so well over the years. So I think that deserves its flowers for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. It was so fun to research this movie, and I highly recommend you do the same, because there's just so much about there that I couldn't include in this episode. But thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'm really excited to announce the next movie. So I'll see you very soon. Bye!